G'day everyone and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap, brought to you by Crowcast, of course. All effort and no reward this week for the Crows, and a bit of a disappointing but not entirely unexpected result. But without any further ado, rather than crap on about it, let's get straight in, shall we? Good evening everyone and welcome to the Weekend Wrap this cold and wet Sunday evening, the 29th of May, and welcome to everyone who's joined us on Discord and YouTube. Nikki was supposed to be joining me tonight, but she hasn't rocked up as yet, so I might be relying on the studio audience, the live studio audience, to keep me going tonight, or else it's going to be a fairly short, sharp and dry podcast, but that's okay. Never mind. Don't forget, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on Discord and you want to have your say tonight, then get on the Discord live channel and you can pop your hand up and have something to say live on the show. And it looks like, unless Nikki rocks up in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to be looking for people to help me out, but that's all right. Look, without any further ado, why don't we get straight into the weekend results, shall we? And we won't spend too long on this, of course, but that's okay. Let's have a look here. Okay, so we had a good game on Friday night. Swans over the Tigers by 6 points with a little bit of controversy at the end, except I don't think it was controversy. I think sanity prevailed, which is a good thing, and the Swans well-deserved win there over the Tigers. We had the Lions, pretty gritty performance by the Giants, but the Lions getting up in the end 16-14 to 15-6, 14 points there to the Lions. The big upset, big-ish upset, except I tipped it, which doesn't say anything, probably means it's a bigger upset than it otherwise would have been. But the Dockers getting up at the G over Melbourne with a couple out, 14-10, 94. Freo to Melbourne, 7-14, 56, a margin there of 38 points. We had the Bulldogs slaughtering a hapless and tanking West Coast, 25-11, 161 to 9-6-60, 101 points there, and the Eagles pretty much putting bottom spot beyond doubt, although they'll probably jag a win against us next week, but more on that later. The Suns, I reckon it was a breakout performance from the Suns. The ones that they have not been winning are the ones where they're a 50-50 chance. They'll get the odd upset win occasionally, and they'll beat lower teams, but it's the 50-50 ones that they rarely get. And this was a really good win by the Suns, 18-13, 121, 67-point winners over Hawthorn, 7-12, 54. And Stewie G might have just locked up another contract there, I reckon, at the Suns. They're going all right. The Saints, 16-7, 103, shook off North Melbourne, 7-8, 50 by 53 points. North Melbourne, absolutely woeful. Skills, I lost count. I only watched this game for about a half, but I lost count of the amount of drop marks that North took in key moments. It was just ridiculous. A lot of work there to do for David Noble and the team. The Pies getting up by 4 points over Carlton. I didn't watch the game, but it sounds like it was a good one. And Carlton just slipping a little bit, but a good game nonetheless. The Power also shaking off a determined second half revival by Essendon, 9-12, 66. 16-point winners over Essendon, 6-14, 50. That leaves us with the ladder, which is taking shape still. Melbourne 40 points on top. Brisbane out and out second on 36. Fremantle and St Kilda 32 points each, followed by Carlton also on 32 points. Geelong and Sydney on 28 points. Western Bulldogs on 24 in the 8. Then we have Richmond and Collingwood out of the 8 on 24 points. Port and the Gold Coast Suns on 20 points. Hawthorn on 16 points. GWS and Adelaide on 12 points. Essendon on 8 points. And a raging battle for the wooden spoon. North Melbourne and the Eagles on 4 points each. Nicky still hasn't joined us, so feel free, anyone who wants to pop in and say g'day and have a chat, feel free to stick your hand up. But let's get straight into the weekend's result for Adelaide. And it was a pretty dismal game in front of goal, but a lot of effort for no reward for Adelaide, going down 7-13-55 by 42 points to Geelong in the end, 15-7-97. And you might think that was a fairly predictable result, but we certainly had a fair amount of the play early, as everyone watching would have seen, and just squandered opportunities in front of goal. Before we get into any sort of analysis on the game, though, I just want to talk about selection real quick. Not real quick, because I think selection was actually key to this particular game, and I'll be happy to read the comments, have a comment about what you think about selection. I've got the wrong one up there. Adelaide Crows, Melbourne, that's not what we want. Anyway, I'll shut that down for a minute. The inclusions of Matt Crouch let's talk about Matt Crouch first. The inclusion of Matt Crouch, in my opinion, was just a signal that this club has not moved on from rewarding seniority over performance. We had Jackson Haitley and Sam Berry just starting to gel as a midfield combination. And this week, as predicted, with Matt Crouch back in the side, I think Jack Haitley had 13 centre bounce attendances, which was half of the total 26 for the game. I think Jack Haitley only had, Sam Berry only had 8. And as a consequence, our clearances, even though when we look at the stats, we'll see that we actually did all right statistically in clearances, the effectiveness of our clearances just went down the toilet. It was a situation, in my opinion, where it just wasn't any quality coming out of the middle, apart from a brief patch in the third quarter where we got a couple of clean balls. But the amount of times I saw Matt Crouch handball to a stationary target or to a player that was in trouble or under pressure, I didn't see him actually drive the ball forward at any stage whatsoever, Matt Crouch. And I just don't understand. I know he had 30-odd possessions in the twos, but we've got to actually start looking at quality rather than just quantity, because the possessions that Sam Berry and Jack Haitley have been getting over the last couple of weeks, in my opinion, have been more valuable, and they need to start thinking about what they want the midfield to look long term, because surely they can't think that Matt Crouch, given that they shortchanged him in his last contract, they tried to get rid of him and no one wanted him, surely they can't think he's best 22. You can't think that Matt Crouch is best 22 if you give him a contract like that. But Matthew Nicks consistently plays these players that aren't best 22 on the basis that they're senior players. Now, I don't know whether he was trying to limit the damage and shield a couple of players from Geelong at Geelong, but it blows my mind. The other interesting selection, of course, was Riley O'Brien. Now, Riley O'Brien probably justified his selection, but I have to ask the question, with Riley O'Brien's effort being up about 50% on his previous efforts prior to being dropped, what was the problem? What was the problem? Riley O'Brien is in the leadership group, and why does he need, as a senior player in the leadership group, to be dropped to the twos, to be reminded about effort? There's still massive question marks about his rucking ability. I saw plenty of times where Riley O'Brien chucked it straight into the path of a Geelong midfielder. He taps to convenient areas for himself rather than convenient areas for our twos, and I just don't understand why they don't get around him and actually start setting up and getting him to set up appropriately so we get some good CBAs. Now, Macca, if that's you in the audience and you want to come on because Nicky hasn't turned up, feel free, mate. Come on board, because people are going to get sick of my voice in a big hurry. So I'm sure they'd love to hear your dulcet tones. So I'll give you a little bit of an invite here. And feel free to come on board, mate. Macca, how you going? Oh, I can't hear you. Hang on. How you going, mate?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
All right, mate. I haven't got my headphones on. And you got my wife watching telly in the background, so I just got to go get my headphones, mate.
That's all right. No problems at all. We can hear you. So how you going?
Travelling all right. It's got a bit of a problem, as you know, at the moment, but
Yep.
We'll get through it.
Getting through it, mate. And you see much of the footy on the weekend?
All of it.
All of it. Very good. Well, I've already done your roundup, so you probably heard I was just ranting about selection and already covered Matty Crouch. Can you give me a reason, Mackie? You're far wiser than I am. Can you give me a reason why Matthew Crouch was selected this week?
Logically, no. You have to try and guess how their minds are thinking, because if you're looking at the overall development of the squad, well, the answer is he shouldn't have been there. But I think that Dix is getting a little bit itchy around the backside with all the losses, and he was hoping that bringing in a couple of experienced players might help him get a win. Also, there could also be the side thinking that maybe if they get a little bit of form out of Crouch, they might get better trade him off at the end of the year.
Look, maybe. I'd certainly, if you're relying on Matthew Crouch to get you a win, then I think you got bigger problems, because Matty Crouch at the moment isn't an AFL standard midfielder, in my opinion. He's not fast enough. He gets plenty of possession, but they're all junk. He doesn't give the ball to advantage. He usually plays teammates into trouble. I don't think his selection was justified. And the thing that, as I was mentioning just now, the thing that really annoyed me was the fact that we were just starting to build a little bit of momentum with Berry and Jackson Haitley doing some good work in there over the last couple of weeks. And I just don't understand why he would want to break that combination up. Sam Berry only had 8 centre bounce attendances on the weekend.
I'm on the same page as you. I agree with what you're saying. I'm just trying to think what their heads could have been thinking in bringing the Crouch back.
Yeah.
Because logically, when you're rebuilding, you take your kicks and you rebuild with the players that you think that are going to take you to eventually to be a reasonably good side.
Yeah.
And start the growth. I don't think there's too many people who logically think that Crouch is amongst that group. And it's not that he's not a player that can't get the ball. He can get plenty of the ball. It's once he's got the ball, he doesn't hurt any other side. So
no. And
that's not going to take the side anywhere. You take Saligo, for example. Saligo would have had probably half the position maybe of Crouch, or maybe 2/3. But I thought he was much more damaging. He's only a junior, and that's exactly where we want to be going.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with you, mate. It was very odd. Of course, Geordie Butts came back in, which was a logical one. But the other one that I want to talk about, and I can even find less justification for this one, is Wayne Miller. Why, Macca, why?
Well, well, he put up such a pathetic performance. Seriously, I reckon, if the league blew past me, he would have shat himself. I mean, he was just so far off that it's not funny. And in terms of his judgment of what was going on, he started actually in the last quarter to just read it slightly better. But no, look, he was miles off. There's no way he should have been in the side.
No. I can't think of a reason why they would want to play him. His form in the twos didn't even justify it, Macca. It wasn't as if he was setting the world on fire in the twos. Nothing about what he'd been dishing up justified his role. The only question that in my mind was he brought in for Indigenous round? I don't know, but if that was the reason,
Good point.
If that was the reason, then someone needs to be drawn and quartered at the club. For goodness sake. He looked so off the pace.
Yeah, like Indigenous round, and we would have been as skinny as anything with the number of Indigenous players. You look at some of the I can't remember which team it was, where I think it was the Melbourne game, where there was 6 on one side and 5 on the other side. There was 11 on them out there. You take a look at Richmond; they had enough players there to do a corollary. And we took ours out there, the ones that are playing. Well,
Shane McAdam.
There's 2 of us here.
Yeah.
So
I really think it was, mate.
That could have part of the reason, mate.
I actually think it occurred to me on Saturday night. I thought, I reckon that was what it was. I reckon it was Indigenous round. No other reason. Look, the other thing, I guess, again, we had the situation, Mac, where everywhere I read, anyone that had any clue was gearing up for another situation where Tom Stewart would play quarterback, run around like an unregistered dog in the back lines for Geelong and just sweep up. He had 2,053 touches, about 250 uncontested marks, and at no stage, Mac, did it occur to our coaching group, our esteemed coaching group, to actually make that man accountable. Unbelievable.
I tweeted exactly what you just said. If you go back to the Freo game and they actually beat them down on that Tunghill Alphabet Oval, they actually made every one of their backmen accountable. They had 6 forwards on 6 backmen. And it takes away the game that Geelong would like to play. On the other hand, we've got stupid us who just left him there, and if we ever did make him accountable, we're happy to leave De Koning there, who played the best game he's played for his short career. He's only a really good player, by the way. The only way I could describe the coaching would be pathetic.
Sorry, you're just fading off there, mate.
I'm sorry, mate. The only way I could describe the coach would be as pathetic.
Yep. Look, it's contradictory. If you're going to bring in a bloke like Matthew Crouch to try and shore up or give experience to the midfield, then you're obviously trying to win the game. But then on the other hand, not only leaving the strategy aside, we just did not match up well in our forward line. At one stage, we had Tilthorpe and Fogarty up forward. They have De Koning, Stewart, Collett Ashney, Zach Toohey. These blokes just absolutely destroyed us in the air. If it wasn't Stewart that was taking uncontested marks, it was that lad De Koning, who's going to be an absolute star, Macca, isn't he? Something. But we had McAdam, Fogarty, Lockie Murphy, James Rowe, Riley Tilthorpe. We had Jordan Dawson up forward. We played Sam Berry up forward for long periods of the game. We were just completely Ned McHenry, Wayne Miller, and we bombed the ball in high. There doesn't seem to be any logical system to our, or connection between our selection and our game plan at the moment?
Well, I really wasn't sure what our game plan was. I know what it is overall. It's to hustle and to bustle and to make and be physical as possible, force the other side into errors. But that can only last so long because physically you can't maintain that. And you saw what happened as the game went on from about halfway through the third quarter onwards. We just couldn't maintain that pressure. We're going to have to develop ultimately a better game plan than that. I mean, that's got to be part of the game plan, but it's got to be more sophisticated than that because physically you just can't maintain it.
Mac, I've come to a conclusion after the run of 3 games because we failed to man up Hill previously against the Saints. We failed to man up against Brisbane. We failed to man up against Geelong with their loose. We were content to stick Geordie Dawson back. This week against Geelong, we wanted to have an extra around the contest, so that left Stewart free. I don't think tactically Matthew Nicks is up to it. I don't know how much sway he has on game day in terms of strategy and making calls, or whether he delegates it to his assistants or whatnot. But at the moment, there's a disconnect between what they talk about when they sit down on a Thursday night to select the team and what they do on the weekend in terms of execution. The other thing, the big realisation, and I think we've probably skirted around this issue for a while, Mac, but I think it's reality, we just don't have the talent. We don't have the talent. And I really think that the reason Matthew Nicks is so heavy on contested ball and cold-face work is because that's about all we've got right now. We've got no polish.
Well, that's because that relates back to not the last draft, and maybe not the last draft before that, but there were 4 consecutive years before that where our drafting was being done as if we were drunk at the time when we made our choices. And, we've got that massive gap of players that should be around about 23, 24 years of age and, starting to be dominators and really good players. Instead, we've got them hanging around in the twos, or if they've played and they don't do much at all. And that was very bad drafting. And that's what Nicks has got. So it's hard to actually pin it all on Nicks. I do pin it upon him with the situation, allowing Geelong to have either one of their 2 backmen back there. They kept alternating, but there was always one back there. And everybody knows that's their plan. Everybody knows it.
It's been that plan. It's been their plan every time we play them. What they do.
When they plan for the game, they should have planned to cover that particular position because that's what they've done to us every time, and that's why we will never beat them down there while we allow that to happen. And then having come back to that, so we've got Nicks is stuck. He's in a little bit of quicksand really because he hasn't quite got the players. I totally agree with you, and it's going to take him probably another couple of drafts and a couple of years of trading to have a side that's competitive and that maybe might have a chance to get into the 8.
Look, I don't disagree with you, Macca, but then it flies in the face of everything that you're saying, that the blokes that are showing a bit are getting messed around. Like I keep coming back to Berry and Haley, who are putting together a good little patch of form and, just get shuffled out for the sake of a senior player. And our midfield just lost any dynamism as a consequence. It was just stagnant. It was flat-footed. No one could get any separation. We couldn't get the ball to the outside. And a lot of people saying that, we're bombing it into the forward line. Half the reason we were bombing it into the forward line is because we just could not get clear of Geelong. And the reason we couldn't get clear is because we have all these slow inside midfielders like Crouch and Laird and whatnot. They can't get separation. They are good distributors by hand out of congestion, but ball in hand, they can't get separation. So we end up kicking hurriedly. The amount of times I saw Brodie Smith or Rory Laird or even Jack Haitley, for that matter, hoofing the ball from the back of the contest after getting a chain of 3 or 4 quick handballs sort of to flat-footed midfielders and having no choice but to just hoof it from the backside of the contest. It's not sustainable. But if that's what's happening, if you're a coach and you see that that's what's happening, surely you try and make the next guy accountable. Tom Stewart, chuck a Mitch Hinge back there, or do something, for God's sakes. Like, you just can't rely on getting more of the ball forward. Like, we'll go through the head-to-head stats in a minute, but the inside 50 variation was horrific, and most of the reason for that was we were just blindly kicking forward.
Yeah, well, that's just absolutely totally unarguable. The one thing we do lack, even though we've got Perry and Haitley, who I think are playing reasonably good footy, we still miss that quick mid for the quick handball out to go forward very, very quickly. And that's what the good sides have. But, you have I think the Bulldogs do it better probably than most, where they've got blokes who go really hard inside, but then they've got to fire it out to a Smith or to a Dunkley or to somebody like that, or to do a Treloar. That can burst away. And we don't have that. And we structure around every midfield. Sometimes I cried when I look at the position where they were standing. There was just no way that we were ever going to do anything where they were standing. Sometimes they're just standing where the ball couldn't possibly be hit. So we first of all, I think we lack class midfielders in the sense of the really top graders. And then apart from that, we really do lack that breakaway midfielder.
Yeah. Harry Schoenberg looked like he could have been a bit of that, but he's struggling a bit with a few issues at the moment, and as a consequence of those issues, he's down on form. But there are other
off-field issues. Yeah.
What? Sorry.
Off-field issues.
Off-field issues, yes. Perhaps behavioural. But he's got to get through that, and the club's got to get through that. Harry has to decide whether he wants to be an AFL footballer, because he's got loads and loads of talent. And if he wants to maximise that talent rather than squander it, then he's got to pull his finger out, because he's potentially one of the pieces in our midfield that we really need. Luke Pedler's another that really has to start getting on his bike. I hear the calls about his engine and all the rest of it. Well, he's got to do something about that. Schoenberg hasn't lost confidence in the coaching staff, Bobby. Schoenberg's been a bit of a lad. So we've got Pedler in the 2s. Zach Taylor is looking all right in the 2. Jake Saligo is looking really promising. I really like the way Jake Saligo has been playing since he's been introduced back into the team. So there's a bit there to work with, but for God's sakes, Matt, those guys are not going to develop in the positions that we selected them or drafted them to play if we're messing them around and not giving them meaningful midfield minutes. We run basically 5 blokes through the midfield for the whole game. And the majority of those centre-bouts attendances are Laird, Crouch, and someone else. It's just Ben Keys. It's just horrific. It's poor development in my view. They may not be A-grade players, but they're the best players that we've got. And we need to find out whether they've got what it takes to take us forward in the midfield. Now, I see someone just joined, Macca, called Nikki.
Nikki.
It was Pete's night.
No, it wasn't. Pete's night is the 5th. It's written there in black and white on the podcaster's channel.
I just thought you stuffed up the dates because you went Macca, Pete, and then me.
Never mind. You get your own cockwomble this week.
Well, I'm not going to be. Well, the 14th is not going to work for me because I'm in Melbourne.
We can work that out afterwards. But thanks for joining us, Nick. It's lovely to see you. We're just talking about selection. The other thing is, again, we went far too short up forward. Now, Kieran Strawn hadn't done a bad job, and Rolly O'Brien towed them up in the 2, so it was worthwhile having another look at him. What was wrong with playing both of them? Someone's feeding back. Macca, that's you.
No, it wasn't me.
No, I just put my headphones on.
Right. What was wrong with playing both Strawn and Rolly O'Brien this week, given the height they had in defence?
I thought it was a perfect week to try it, wasn't it?
Absolutely perfect week to try it. And Strawn did absolutely nothing wrong and did not deserve to get put back to the 2s at all.
Well, I think we're all in agreement with that, Nicky, but we were talking about selection overall before you came on, and for example, Crouch and Miller are coming back, and Crouch was what Crouch always is, and Miller was so far off that it wasn't funny.
I mean, Miller hasn't been burning the house down at SANFL level. They've had to move him around to try and get him into form at that level. And when they brought him in, they put him on the half-forward line, and he just kind of ran around where the ball was, and that was it. It was a useless piece of selection, and I think it was actually probably a setback for Miller.
I mean, we don't have to go over that one again, but I don't understand. I just feel like, again, when you look at the makeup of the Geelong side, and with Tex going out, we were down to 2... tall marking target. Well, you can't even call Fogarty a marking target, but let's put him in that bracket with Tilthorpe. McAdam, who has been playing well, but is a medium-sized third tall. We don't see Lockie Gallant come back in, so we basically don't see anyone come in for Tex Walker. Wayne Miller came in for Tex Walker. Like, just ludicrous, given that we know that Geelong play tall in defence. And then we bomb it in. We don't actually work. Like when we had set plays from outside 50 and like a free kick or a mark, 70 or 80 out, we just bomb it in. We don't work it around the arc. We don't try to spread them. We don't try to make space. When we did actually try to do that, that's when Fogarty was at his most effective. When we were creating little pockets for Fogarty to run into, that's when he was effective, and it was really good to see Darcy make the most of those opportunities. But too many times we just played straight into their hands, and we basically relied on them messing up in defence for us to be able to score.
Yeah, every time they bombed it in, DeConnick was quite capable of either marking or spoiling it, because he's got, I think he's 204 centimetres, Fiend, which is a pretty tall guy, and yet he's mobile, he's balanced, he hasn't grown into himself properly yet, but gee, he's going to be a football and a half, that boy. As you said, we just played right in their hands by keep just bombing it in. The few times that we did kick it into a space where Fog could lead to, yeah, he did the right thing. But it's just proved the old question that you just can't play Tex and Fogarty in the same team.
No, that's right. So what do? There's a few whispers around that there's some interest from Brisbane on Fogarty, which I find surprising. But I've seen that a few places now, that Brisbane have had some chats. I don't know where he fits into Brisbane's forward line, but anyway. But this is the thing about... I know Tex has been going okay, although the last couple of weeks he's been quiet and he's been missing opportunities. But we made a call with Tex a couple of years ago to continue to back him in, and I think that was to Darcy's detriment. And this is another situation where we'll never know whether Darcy would have grown into a footballer in those couple of years. But the fact is that as a consequence of Tex being in the side, we never found out. We never worked out whether Darcy was going to work as a lead up forward. So now we're in this position where Darcy's five or six seasons in, and down on confidence, all the rest of it. And I thought Darcy played quite well on the weekend for the opportunities that he got. But you watch what happens. When Tex is right, Tex will come straight back in. Fogarty will either get dropped or he'll get pushed to a pocket. And we're back to the same old structure that has not worked for us for a long period of time.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that you're talking about the possibility that other teams might be interested in Fogarty, but there's a rumour going around, or a little bit more than the rumour, that there are clubs prepared to offer Walker a 2-year contract. So if it came to trading off Walker or trading off Fogarty, who would you be trading for?
Whoever gets us the most money. Oh, well, I mean, no, actually, that's not true. I'd be getting rid of Walker. Walker is not part of our next premiership side, so you would get rid of him. Look, Macca, in my humble opinion, and I've said this on this cast previously over the course of the last few years, in my humble opinion, we overrated our 2017 grand final. We made the 2017 grand final on the back of an even year, a soft draw, 2 good home finals, but we actually weren't as good as what we thought we were. And if our list management committee were professionals and had good metrics and actually looked at things objectively rather than subjectively, they would have known that at the end of 2018 that they needed to turn over the list. Then we had blokes on the table that we could have got rid of, but what we did, we got rid of low-hanging fruit. We kept playing Betts, we kept playing Gibbs, we kept playing Walker, these blokes, the Crouch boys, etc. And as a consequence, we just fell in a big, great hole. And this is where we're at now. So and the club is just repeating its mistakes, Nicky and Macca, in my opinion, by continuing to play Walker, continuing to play Matt Crouch. Luke Brown's another, Chase Jones gets dropped. Luke Brown hasn't done anything for 6 months. Chase Jones gets dropped on the back of one bad game where he got the shit beaten out of him halfway through the second quarter. He comes on in this game for a quarter and does more than Luke Brown's done in the whole game. When are we going to learn? When are we going to move? When are we going to learn that we are not in a refresh? Our list is absolutely cooked, and our senior players are not good enough. They had their chance. The senior players had their chance. They had their opportunities. And yes, they had to fight through 2015 and the tragedy there. But their peak was 2016. They got a good draw and made the most of it in 2017 and got found out in the game that matters. 2018, they fall apart. The party should have been broken up at that point. And as a consequence, we're a mess. Our list is an absolute mess.
Well, it's interesting because it did look like we were serious about the whole thing when we Talia, even before it turned out it was a very good choice because he never played all year, but Talia wanted to go on and we told him no. We got rid of Lynch when he had played some good football. We got rid of number 14, David McKay, who we all missed tremendously, who was playing very good football at the time in his last year. So when with those 3 players, we looked like we was deadly serious about not playing the older players and playing the younger players, and that if it came to the choice between a young player or an older player not playing so well, we would play the younger player. But that seems to have faded into the background this year.
So, Nicky, is it a matter of, because it seems like, and you're dead set right, Macca, the list management committee, which Roo sits on, as well as Matthew Nix, as well as Adam Kelly, can't remember who else is on it, Haggis probably. The list management committee seemed to draw a line in the sand last year, but selection hasn't followed suit. So where does the problem lie? I'm starting to wonder whether we as a club have failed over the last 10 years to walk the line between culture and workplace harmony and professionalism. Because to me, we value culture and hard work more than we should at the expense of professional performance.
100% spot on.
What do you think, Nick?
Yeah. Oh, totally. We know there were some issues within the club. We know they were trying to rectify some of those issues, but I think what they've done is they've gone too far in one direction around that. And I mean, the case in point regarding like Walker and Lynch was, well, we had to keep, if they were going to keep one senior player around, it had to be a choice between one of those two. And they chose to keep Walker, I think, because he still had a contract. I think might have actually probably been better to keep Lynch in a way, more than Walker, because you're right, because by keeping Walker, we've held back on seeing what Fogarty can actually do. We've held back on seeing what Tilthorpe can actually do, because Walker takes the position that those two, where they need to play and where we need to see them being, whether they can sink or swim. And they don't want to, the club still seems to be scared of that, what people like to dub the apricot slice brigade. That, oh, they're a good bloke, we've got to keep them around. We want to be nice to, we're too nice. This is sport. This is a professional sport. You need to be ruthless. As much as you want to be respectful and everything else is part of that, it's still sport at the end of the day. And they needed to make hard decisions, and they've only made a couple when they should have made more.
Well, I think, Nikki, you're right. You don't have to be a bad bloke to be professional. Phil Walsh was very big on man conversations, and that was a bit of a mantra around the club when he was with us. And I think we're dealing with grown-ups, we're dealing with adults. What we're not dealing with is data. We're not dealing with metrics. We're actually dealing with personalities and cultural, stuff. And at the end of the day, when a player walks into the Adelaide Footy Club, they need to understand that they're walking into a professional environment in a professional sport, and there are expectations. And the club should be able to define those expectations around performance. And they've got access to a ton more metrics than what we can see on afl.com.au in those, basic stats that we see. They've got a ton more stuff that they can look at to measure a bloke's performance and measure a bloke's impact on the side. And yes, there has to be an element of a bloke doing the right thing around the club and all the rest of it. But have a look at Dusty Martin. Dusty Martin's been no angel during his career. He's stabbed people with chopsticks or whatever the hell that was, and all the rest of it. But Richmond have got around him, and Dusty Martin, as a consequence, is probably a better man now than he ever was. And I look at a bloke like Harry Schoenberg, who apparently at the moment, I'm not saying that Harry's stabbed anyone with chopsticks, but there's a few whispers around about what Harry's been getting up to. That's all well and good. The club has to be professional about that with Harry and say, look, this is what we expect of you. If you get yourself into trouble out of hours and that impacts your performance, it's no different, Nicky and Macca, than if I go out on the piss on a Sunday and don't rock up to work on the Monday. I'll get warned as well. So these blokes need to be treated the same way. The thing that gets me is that I interviewed a lot of those young kids when they were drafted, and all of them expressed excitement about taking the club forward as a new generation. Now, do you reckon they're still feeling that now?
I think some are. I would say, like McHenry, for example. He's not a star footballer, but there's no doubt that he gives 100% to try and take the club forward every week. I think that applies to Rowe. I think like Saligo and Rochelle, etc. Oh, I think there's a few, but there'll be others. But we've still got dead wood hanging around, Fleet. We've got dead wood, and
For sure.
players that I don't know whether it's our development or what. Players that we thought would have come on by now, and they still haven't got a game even, or they've had one game or whatever. Somebody said McHenry's a dud. Yeah, look, I didn't say he was a champion. I said he embraces what we would like the team to do in terms of effort.
Yeah, but that's not even quite what I'm talking about, Mac.
I guess culture.
Well, no, I guess no. I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think when those lads came into the club, they were probably sold the dream of they're the next generation and they're going to take the club forward. But the way that they've been developed in terms of their selection and in terms of where they've been played, the positions and all the rest of it, do you think that they'd go home after a game of footy and believe that the club is walking the walk? Or do you think that they would be a little bit disenchanted because the dream that they were sold when they walked in the door about being the next generation hasn't really come to fruition because of the way that they've been treated in terms of selection and development?
Oh, quite a few would be in that category for certain things.
I think we saw a perfect example of it this week. I mean, with Strawn being dropped after having two really good games and taking an even bigger step last week, just because the senior player who had multiple chances to come good didn't, and finally had to be dropped only after tremendous pressure from the media and the supporters actually pointing out how poor he was playing. He comes back and he finally has one good game in the twos, and you get ousted for him.
Yeah. I'd make that exact point.
That has to go across the whole playing group to go, well, the younger guys going, well, why should we try? Why?
It's a little bit worse than that, Nikki, because the very same guy you're talking about, it was only in probably about less than a week ago, it was told that he'd be given a body of work of 3 to 4 games to prove his worth. That was by the coach. And he played well enough, and even in his second game, and he gets dropped.
Yeah.
So coach didn't even honour his own work.
Yeah, that's right. And again, it gets back down to a lack of thinking. We could have played both of them this week. We could have played both of them last week. I just think that there's a bit of a failure at the club. There's an issue with the club, and it's gone over the course of changes in coaching, changes in administration. So who knows what the common denominator is? But there seems to be this high value placed on work rate. We saw it with DMAC for 10 years of his career, where, good bloke, great trainer, he gets picked. There's been others. Richie Douglas gets picked. We're seeing it now with Matty Crouch. One good game one half decent game in the twos, it gets picked to the detriment of our development. There is something going on at the club that has been endemic. Scotty Thompson was another one. It's endemic, and it needs to change. There is no professional standards being driven because the club isn't prepared to sit down with a club favourite and a fan favourite and go, look, you're not performing at the level, and we need to push you aside for someone new. Hell, when I was playing bloody amateur league in Divi frickin' 3 or whatever, I got told the same thing when I hit my 30s. Sorry, mate, you're still playing well, but we want to start playing the kids, so you'll be playing Bs. That's just what happens in footy. There's a transition. We don't seem to be able to have that conversation.
You're popular for a while, and you get to a certain age and a certain standard, and there are other people behind you coming up. Yeah, it's inevitable.
Look at how Al Clarkson handled it. He pushed Luke Hodge to half-back, and he said to Sam Mitchell and Jordan Lewis, look, if you want to have a couple more years at the level, you're going to have to go somewhere else. You know, they were favourite sons of that football club. They had won premierships together. You know, they had been through thick and thin with Al Clarkson, those three, and they were told, when the time was right, they were told, look, if you want to continue to play at senior level, you're going to have to look somewhere else. And Hodgie, if you want to continue to play, I'm prepared to use you, but only at half back. That you know, that's what needs to happen. A bloke like Luke Brown needs to be told, look, at the moment you're not producing. You know, and this is another thing. It's not as if Luke Brown's 35 years old either. What the hell? But Luke Brown is not performing at the moment. We've got 75,000 halfback flankers in our squad, and yet they're all playing in the twos because Luke Brown gets a game. Brodie Smith couldn't hit the side of a barn door at the moment. He's been playing well, but his disposal has been absolutely shocking, and it was absolutely shocking again against Geelong. Now, do you reckon we're going to be able to front up and have a hard conversation with Brodie and say, look, you're just not cutting the mustard at the moment. We'd like you to work on your disposal and all the rest of it. Have a run in the twos for a few weeks. We want to try someone else. Give Josh Worrell a run. Josh Worrell must... I'm sure that Josh Worrell can't wait to get out of the bloody place at the moment. The fact that kid...
Nicky, I've got to ask Nicky, if he's Worrell play, how would you rate him at the moment, Nick?
Oh, I didn't get to see the others recently, but I've always liked the way he plays. I think he deserves a solid run in the AFL, because particularly when you're playing defence and when you're I'd call him a hybrid player in a way, because he can play on the smalls and he can play on talls. He's a very handy player to actually have in your squad, and he's used to actually being moved around. And like all through his junior career, and we would do it a little bit as well in the SANFL. I think he needs to be given that little block like we have with some of the other youngsters. For me, everything about this, it always comes down to the fact that this is a team sport, and if you want to succeed as a team, you sometimes have to sacrifice yourself. Those, as you were discussing there, Fiend, those hard conversations have to be had. And the reason why Hawthorn was such a champion team is because they were a team, which is why Clarkson could have those conversations with the players and go, well, we actually need to keep succeeding. We want to keep succeeding. If you want to be a part of this, this is what you have to do, and I am going to move you out. Otherwise, if you don't want to be a part of that and move to this spot, I will completely move you out. And that's what seems to be forgotten. People still, unfortunately, focus a lot on individuals individually. I want to look at, and to me, it all has to come down to it's a team, and the one who is in charge is the coach, and we need a coach who is strong enough to say this is exactly what we need to do, where we're going, and is not beholden to people above him saying, if you want to keep your job, this is what you need to do.
And the thing
they need to butt out.
The thing of it is, Nick, that if you said that to the club right now, the club would say, yeah, but we need experience. And my counter to that is there's no point having experience if your experience is no good, right? Now, of the experienced players that we've got on our team now, I'd probably, and Tom Duday, I guess, like, not really experienced, but I guess you'd put him in that category. Luke Brown shouldn't be there. Brodie Smith, very borderline. Geordie Dawson, yep, absolutely. Who else have we got?
Hamill, yes.
No, he's not experienced.
Well,
I
he's
think
a bit more than the others.
Rory Laird. No, I'm talking
Rory
about
Laird.
our experienced players, our senior players. Rory Laird, yes, under the right circumstances. Matt Crouch, a big fat no. Wayne Miller, a big fat no. There's not a lot of senior experience that we have in our side at the moment that I would say is valuable experience. And in the absence of that valuable experience, we may as well play a kid. We may as well, what was the problem like Josh Worrell was a forward in his under 18 years. What was the problem? If they didn't want to play Lockie Gallant What was the problem in playing Josh Worrell this week or Braden Cook? Instead, we bring in bloody Wayne Miller. What the hell?
Now, that is one I'm really, really dark about. I'm glad you raised that. Miller instead of Cook. Cook is going to be a star of the future. There's no doubt about it. He's going to be very, very good. He should be given every opportunity to be playing. And to bring in Miller, who, as Nicky's quite rightly said, his form in the Bs did not justify coming up to the A's. And he proved that when he went out and put in a very, very timid, underperforming game that really added nothing to our team whatsoever. He did a couple of fancy little dances at the end, but overall, you just added what he brought to the team. And I'd say he brought a negative to the team. Whereas you brought in young Cook, you're bringing in a positive because he's going to grow that little bit more when he plays every time. Because you can see he's got ability and he's going to be a very good player. Give him the chance of developing it at the right level.
Yeah. If they wanted to go small, why not Tariq Newchurch, who's been playing okay in the twos? Why not give him a run? I know it's Geelong at Geelong and we don't want to set blokes up to fail, but we set the whole team up to fail by the way that we selected the side and then the way that we played in terms of our strategy. So anyway, all right. Look, we could bang along about that for ages. I guess what I was left with at the end of that game, I was extremely frustrated watching that game because our effort, which is all we've got to hang our hat on, wasn't being rewarded by blokes having shot for goal. And Macca and Nicky, every one of those shots was taken by a bloke who was scared shitless of failing. There's not one bloke in our team at the moment, apart from maybe Josh Rochelle when he's in there and Geordie Dawson, who see kicking for goal from a set shot as an opportunity to succeed. They all see it as an opportunity to fail.
Yep, you're on the money, Fiend. And then look, having played it and being one of the greediest players that ever played football, I made Bartlett look like a team player. I loved any chance to have a shot for goal. I wouldn't care if it was a 1 degree angle. I wouldn't pass it off, not when I could have a shot for goal, because I believed I could kick it every time.
Exactly.
And I just don't believe these guys that they are playing AFL. They've got all the skills in the world. When you're having a shot for goal, you just pick a target behind the goals and you make out you're passing the ball to them. It's as easy as that.
It's the simplest thing in the world. A shot for goal from 35, 40 metres out is the simplest skill in football, Macca. A set shot from 40 metres out is the simplest skill in football because you've only got to do 3 things. You've only got to run in, you've only got to drop the ball straight, and you've only got to point your toe at the target. That's all you got to do.
Exactly.
All you got to do.
And you can see the majority of our players, when they've got the ball and they're about to have a shot for goal, you can almost see it running down their lead feed. I mean, they're terrified.
Oh, yeah. But the amount of times that, like Jackson Haitley's got an issue with this, Shane McAdams got an issue with this. You watch where their leg goes when they kick. Their leg goes to the left. Like they instead of kicking through the ball and pointing their toe at the target, their toe goes to the left. So one of 2 things is going to happen. You're either going to hook it or you're going to whiff it. It's like hitting a golf shot and whiffing it. You're not going to make good contact with the ball and it's just going to drift to the right. I mean, this is a simple, basic mechanic. I could go down there and bloody teach them how to do it, and I'm sure half the people listening to this podcast could do it. And I just don't understand how professional footballers can be that bloody average when it comes to one of the basic skills of the game.
They also are lined up incorrectly. They're actually, this is something that's annoyed me for the past couple of years, they're actually not lined up directly with the goal, in the centre of the
that's
goal.
Right.
Haitley's one, that shot he had in that first quarter, he actually did kick that straight, but that's exactly where he ran. He ran towards the point post. He did not run towards the centre of the goals.
Right, Nick.
Yep, and the reason why it faded off to the right was because he was expecting it to hook, because that's his kicking style, and he whiffed it and it just fluffed out to the... Like, he hardly kicked it 40 metres.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too is that we missed probably at least 3 shots through not kicking right through the ball. And when you don't kick right through the ball, there is it's not a natural thing. It's just an instinctive thing that the foot tends to poke upwards a little bit, and if you do
That's
that,
right.
it'll always kick it to the right.
That's
the
right.
players, when they don't kick right through the ball, they usually just spoon it to the right.
That's right.
And because the leg's not coming all the way through.
And the ball's got no momentum because you've fluffed it, and so any sort of wind is going to take it offline as well.
Yeah, and we miss it at least 3 goals just because they didn't just do a proper kick where you try to do a dink rather than a kick. As I said, it is simple. You pick a spot where behind the goals, and you try and lob the ball on that spot, and you'll kick it straight through the goals every time.
Yeah, you'll never see a bloke like Lockett or Dunstall or Matthew Lloyd just dink it over the fence. They would kick it into the second tier, irrespective of how far out they were. Some of the best goal kickers in the game.
Stab at it.
You know, you've got to have momentum through the ball. You've got to actually kick the ball through the wind. You've got to kick it with purpose. But it's a very, very simple mechanic. It's such a simple mechanic, and I just don't understand how professional footballers don't do it. And as a result, any sort of momentum at the beginning of the game that we had, and Geelong, I don't think Geelong ever hit top gear, but certainly we had a little bit of momentum early. They hadn't turned up yet, and we could have been 4 up on them very quickly, and at least put some pressure on them, and at least given ourselves a sniff. I think you could tell by halfway through the game that our players had lost belief. There's no way any of them thought that we could win the game, and they were just playing out time.
Yep, agreed.
Another situation that I'd just like to point out, and I wish I'd captured this footage, but I haven't. But everyone will remember Jeremy Cameron's first goal, where he took the mark, or something, got a free, took the mark, sort of around the 50 on the right half forward flank for them, and wheeled around and kicked the goal. Now, if anyone's interested, go back and watch that football and look at Brodie Smith. Everybody knows that Jeremy Cameron likes to get around on the left foot and kick it snap style rather than drop punt style when he's in those positions. Brodie Smith is 10 metres away with his back to Cameron, whereas he should have been front on to Cameron and getting ready for the play on call from the umpire to make it difficult for Cameron. Now, it's only a little thing, and he may have kicked it anyway, but it's one of those things, Macca, that is lacking from our senior players. Brodie Smith is a 200-game player, and he should have known that Jeremy Cameron was going to wheel around on his left, and he had his back to him, and when he turned his head after Cameron to kick the ball, it looked like he did not care. And that rubs off. Why have Brodie Smith in your team if that's the example he's going to set?
Yeah, it was a very bad example. I agree with that. Overall, I mean, he genuinely does very, very good getting the ball, and his disposal lacks a lot because he generally just bombs it. But that particular incident you're talking about, I remember that incident, and he wasn't the lone soldier. But a few other players just fell for very, very dumb type of thing that you would expect that an AFL footballer would have thought about, but a little bit better.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's a concentration thing, Matt. It's akin to not having someone on the goal line. Not having your ruckman on the goal line for a 15-metre shot at goal. To defend. It's just one of those things that a senior player should have known, and the fact that he didn't even care about it, didn't make an effort, wasn't switched on, was just walking, aimlessly next to his player who wasn't in the play, is just indicative, and that's the sort of crap that our kids see our seniors do, and you would think that as a consequence they just lose a little bit of respect as a consequence.
Yeah, there's another goal that Geelong got, which was in their forward pocket. Their looking at them down the ground in their right-hand forward pocket. All our players were down there, but not one player was there on the goal side of the pack. Geelong had 2 players on their own goal side.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just elementary thing. Elementary.
Was that when 3 blokes went up and none of them killed the contest and they all just let it get over the back?
Yep, and and when there was 2 of them sitting there and they just raffled it for a goal.
Yep. I was so annoyed. You could see it happening. Oh, did I yell at the television? Thank God my neighbours weren't here. But it was we actually did it. So this was something that we talked about at the start of the year, that there was a bit of a problem that our players were getting sucked into the contest too much, and they rectified it, and we started. No, it's your turn to go in. I stay back, and we actually keep our shape better. But this game, and I think it does come back to that lack of confidence and everything that's going on that came through the goal kicking. But I think this is what it came in as well, is they're actually not trusting their teammates, which is why everybody was going one into the contest and not trusting their teammate, which is why we lost our shape, which is why Geelong, who was playing poo, was able to beat us.
Yeah, we could have and should have had a good lead at quarter time, and probably still possibly had a lead at half time, and it would have been a different type of game. But you're right, Nicky, that we lose our shape, our structure so easily, and it's I like the intensity, but I've also got to use a little bit of thought as well.
Yeah, it's all thought, no polish. It's all intensity, no polish, Mac. And that's a very difficult thing to sustain over 4 quarters. You cannot win a game on effort alone. You've got to have polish. You've got to be able to use the ball. You've got to set up right. You've got to have a bit of run on the outside. You've got to have the right balance. All those things are lacking. I don't think anyone will ever doubt the Crows' commitment to the contest and desire to work for most of them, particularly the youngsters. Their desire to work is definitely there, but it's just like hammering a nail with a sledgehammer at the moment. It's not. There's no finesse whatsoever. Someone in the chat asked if we can discuss Jason Horne-Francis briefly. Look, I would. What annoys me about the situation, and we'll only spend a couple of minutes on it, what annoys me about the Horne-Francis situation is that we valued winning over the bigger picture in Jason's draft year last year, and as a consequence, we finished too high up the ladder, and so we put ourselves in a difficult bargaining position when we did put something to North Melbourne and they rejected it. There's nothing we could do about that, but I just wonder whether we went back to them, because Jason Horne-Francis will cost double of anything that we put to North Melbourne in his draft year. And as much as I'd like to think we throw the kitchen sink at him, I just can't see how we can get Jason back.
Well, that's always possible at the end of next year, not this year. At the end of next year, if he says, no, I don't want to sign on, he'll be up for trade. But as you say, he won't be cheap, and you'll have. And if apparently he's homesick, and he may not be homesick in a year's time, but presuming he's still in the same situation, the same thought, same mind frame, there's no reason why he could not choose Port rather than us. So, as you said quite rightly, we really just had to get him last year.
Look, we identified him a mile out. I've been talking about Jason for 2 years before his bloody draft year. And if I could see it as a casual observer, then surely our recruiting staff should have had a strategy to make sure that Jason Horne-Francis was on our list. They just
could have been
done
easily.
Could have been done easily. Easily, Macca. It could have been done. I tell you, someone needs to go and get a copy of the West Coast Eagles tanking playbook, because they do it better than anyone. They do it better than anyone. They're doing it this year as well. It's amazing. You will never see West Coast Eagles spend more than a couple of years outside of the 8. But when they're outside of the 8, by hell, they're outside of the 8. They don't do things by halves. And unfortunately, that's what we needed to do, and we didn't have the nuts for it.
And interesting how they can move back up the ladder very, very quickly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But anyway, look, to finish that conversation off, I don't care what the club do. If the club gave away 10 draft picks and bloody, I don't know, 5 players for Jason Horne-Francis, I wouldn't care. There's probably only 3 or 4 players on our list that I would ask them not to get rid of. Probably Thilthorpe, Rochelle, Jordan Dawson, and should I even scratch them for the 4th?
Saligo. I'd like to keep Saligo.
No, he's not untouchable. He's not untouchable for Jason Horne-Francis, Matt. I think the only untouchables for Jason Horne-Francis are Thilthorpe, Rochelle, and Geordie Dawson. I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head. Jake Saligo is going to be a good player, absolutely, but you've got to give stuff to get stuff. And to me, they're the only 3 that I wouldn't be happy giving up.
I'd agree with J&M about Butts as well.
No. He's a defender, Nikki. He's a defender.
We bloody miss him when he's not there.
Of course we do, but there are lots of defenders. There are not a lot of gilt-edged midfielders. There are not a lot of match winners. There are not a lot of Paddy Dangerfields in the world. Not a lot of Dusty Martins in the world. Jason Horne-Francis, it's clear, will be like that. It's clear. It's been clear since he was 16 years old. So, Geordie Butts, love him to pieces. Mr. Reliable, would happily give him to North Melbourne in a deal for Jason Horne-Francis.
Look, I tend to agree with you, Fane. As good as Butts is, as you say, he's a backman. You can always scratch up a backman from somewhere where, not necessarily the same standard, but you can get them in the rookie draft and they develop, etc. So, but you don't get Horne-Francis growing on trees. They come along just once in a while. And to tell you what, I couldn't quite see it when they first mentioned it, but he does play more and more like Patrick Dangerfield every day. Every time I see him go around now.
With skill.
You wait. With skill, you're right, Nick.
I watched him today, and to me, he looks like he's playing pissed off. He really looks like he's playing pissed off, and he looks like he doesn't really think his teammates are helping him very much. But he still can't stop himself from giving 100%. So, which to me says he is a star. That you can actually be that pissed off with your teammates, but you still can't stop yourself from giving 100%.
Yep, he's a natural competitor. I think he's frustrated because North Melbourne is so shit. And you can actually see his teammates getting around him. They know how good he is. They know what they've got in their club. They know how good he is. And they're probably almost feeling a little bit embarrassed about what they're putting on the table. Look, it was just a gilt-edged opportunity to get a once-in-a-generation player, and I know Razor Ray is probably having seizures on the floor at the moment, but I don't care. Sorry, Rays. But we just miffed it. We just miffed it, and now we're gonna either have to pay a fortune for him because he is now exposed at AFL level, or he never plays for us, which is probably the most likely.
I'd say that's the most likely.
Yeah.
It's a dream situation would be he wants to come home and we get him somehow. That would be a dream situation. And I'm like you. Yeah, we'll give you our first, we'll give you our second, chuck in this player, we'll chuck in that player, whatever you want.
Yep. I'd even rename one of the stand, like the Riverside stand, the bloody Glen Archer stand. I couldn't care less. The Mickey Martin stand should probably be appropriate because Mod sat on his bald nut enough times in the goal square. So, anyway, Let's move on and quickly look at some head-to-head stats, shall we? While we're talking about this game, again, we're going to see that there's not a hell of a lot in terms of the stats. 406 to 381 disposals, 226 to 198 in kicks, 180 to 183 in handballs. Inside 50s, if you don't mind, 61 to 36, which is the one that basically shows you that we were just bashing our head against a brick wall. Our disposal efficiency just under 70%, Geelong went at 75. Contested possessions, we won that much vaunted stat, and I'll tell you again, and I'm actually going to pull the stats out of Hawthorn and Geelong in their premiership years, how many times they didn't win contested possession counts, still won the game. Uncontested possession, 257 to 227. Geelong just usable, a lot better on the outside. Turnovers were even. Possession was even. So we had enough of the ball. Hit-outs, 42 to 51. Riley O'Brien did well because Riley O'Brien was visible around the ground. I still have a big question, Nick and Mac, about his ruck work. There was a period there where he was just putting it in the wrong spots, and whether that's the setup of our midfielders or whether it's just Riley not being a very good ruckman, I'm not sure. But at least, as I've always said, his value when he actually starts doing stuff around the ground, and he worked very hard. Clearances, we won those 45 to 51. Centre, we lost 12 to 9 around the ground, 42 to 33 in our favour. Marks, 102 to 82. They absolutely destroyed us. I reckon 100 of those were Tom Stewart. Just ridiculous. Marks inside 50. We actually won that one 6 to 11. Contested marks 9 to 7. Tackles, Geelong 100 to our 78. That's a bit of a worry. I felt like they brushed us a lot, so probably a lot of missed tackles there. Tackles inside 50, they were very good, 21 to our 10. 1% is slightly in our favour. Interestingly, as an aside, Sam Berry is the number one player at the moment in the league for pressure acts.
Yes.
And he gets 8 centre bounce attendances out of 26.
Well, that's good thinking, isn't it? Isn't it, Fiend? Really good thinking.
Makes sense, doesn't it? Makes sense, doesn't it?
I'm just shaking my head.
Well, I saw Crouchy get a few and just wander out slowly and wonder what to do with it. Just shocking, actually.
So anyway, that was the tale of the tape. There's not much to read into that, really. Simply because it wasn't about how much ball we got, it's about what we did with it and about how easy it was for them to rebound off defensive 50. Let me just have a look at some individual stats here. Okay. So, as usual, Rory Laird, 38 disposals, 12 kicks, 26 handballs. Now, if that's not an indication of a midfielder that cannot get separation, I don't know what is.
Partly, Fiend. Partly. There was a few times when he actually got the ball when he should have kicked and he handball. He often has to handball because he's getting under pressure, because he does go in where Angels feet a tread, and you never, ever say that Lairdy's soft at all. He always gives 100% and goes in hard. But also he's getting a little bit guilty of handballing when he shouldn't be handballing. When he would actually be better off steadying himself and try and find a chest.
Yeah, and that's because he can't get separation, Macca. Or he's not thinking about getting separation, maybe.
It's the latter. Yeah, the latter.
Yeah, okay. Look, 8 tackles, 14 clearances, which is very good. Over 300 metres gained. He had 4 centre clearances, 6 score involvements, 76% disposal efficiency, 20 contested possessions. So I didn't feel like he had any real impact on the game for all those possessions, Mac and Nick.
Only in the sense that if he hadn't have got the ball, I mean, flying the other way, but in that sense he did. But But yeah, look, it wasn't a magical game. But when you compare it to some of our other efforts, it was still passable.
Yeah. Benny Keys, another one, 29 touches, 15 and 14, so a better kick to handball ratio. It's just a pity that his kicks go astray sometimes. 354 metres gained. He had 5 inside 50s. He had 5 score involvements. Surprisingly, nearly 80% disposal efficiency, 9 contested possessions. So, again, I felt like a lot of his possessions were rushed. It always seemed to be under the hammer, and therefore probably didn't get value for disposal that we might have expected from Ben.
Yeah, he works very, very hard to get the ball. He's the best two-way runner in the team, and probably the only really hard two-way runner in the team, which means he's often pretty tired when he's got the ball. So, and he does get it, and he does get it under pressure situations. But that's part of the reason for his disposal. But he's also not naturally a great kick, so that's the other part of it.
Yeah,
I think he is trying. He is trying when he's in the open to try and dispose better. Doesn't always succeed, but you can actually notice. I thought maybe 2 or 3 times on the weekend where he actually steadied himself trying to put it on a chest. A couple of times he did.
Yeah. Riley O'Brien.
He seemed to be more.
Sorry, Nick.
I was just going to say he seemed to be working more on the defensive side. And so I wasn't as annoyed with him as I was with others.
No. Riley O'Brien I thought was a good return and credit to him, but I just wish as a senior player he didn't need that kick up the arse to actually perform. 28 disposals, 12 and 16, 5 marks, 7 tackles, 47 hit-outs, 9 clearances himself. He also had 4 inside 50s, 5 score involvements, 5 intercept marks, 57% disposal efficiency, but you'd expect that from a ruckman. 24 contested possessions, so it was a really good return. I just wish that they had kept Kieran in and allowed them to work in tandem and maybe exposed Geelong's lack of ruckman, because they really only had blitz halves.
Yeah, I think it was a perfect example. So that game was a perfect opportunity, to try out the 2 ruckman. And just make sure you keep your 6-5-6 and one hanging around right around the goal square, just to keep them right back. Then they couldn't have done their attacking like they normally do.
That's right. I just want to have a look at O'Brien's. Let me just have a look here. Hit-outs to advantage rate, 31 or 32% hit-out to advantage rate, 47% hit-out win rate. He had 15 hit-outs to advantage out of his total hit-outs of, what did I say they were? 47. So not fantastic in terms of hit-outs to advantage, but not terrible by league standards, 15. The problem with Riley with his tap work is that when he's not in the right position, he will just tap it to where it's easiest for him to tap it, rather than recognising there are times he needs to nullify the opposition ruckman, because the ball's going to go where the opposition want it to go if he doesn't nullify.
Well, that's the art of rucking, isn't it, really? It is to try and give your players the ball on a plate. I mean, it's that art of rucking.
Yeah.
And somebody pointed out that he really telegraphs exactly where he's going to go, where even before he connects, everybody knows where it's going to go, which is why it's so easy for opposition midfielders to read, because they're actually proactive around the ball. And now, if he's so obvious about that telegraphing, how can our midfielders not know where that is?
Yeah. Because they're not. It goes where they're not expecting it to go, Nick, because that's not how they've set up. That's the thing.
Yeah, you set up in a certain manner, Nicky, and the idea is that where you set up is might not necessarily where you want the ball. You want the ball hit. You might want to hit like 3 metres away from you, so you can run that at full bore, etc. But they don't. Well, if they've got that plan, they certainly can't deliver it because it's not happening. I think I was going to say about Riley. Be fun.
and they can't adjust.
No,
And
they
it's
can't.
not about it.
Midfielder will adjust.
No,
Well,
No, Nikki, that's wrong. A good midfielder, like, you have your setup. You don't adjust because where the ball is tapped depends on where the ruckman position, where the ruckman puts it. The ruckman needs to know where his midfielders are going to be. Otherwise, it's just a crapshoot. The problem is, because it's a variable ball up, because it's often a bounce that goes crooked, often Riley will find himself facing the wrong way or out of position, right?
Yeah.
So he needs to understand in those circumstances that he doesn't just tap it tap it in front of him, because he's in the wrong spot. He needs to nullify those taps. He needs to be able to jump into the ruckman, or he needs to be able to hit the ball with a fist or something like that. All he does is taps it to where it's easiest for him to tap it. It's impossible for a midfield group to adjust to that. It's not how it works.
You do have to be flexible though, Fane, in the sense that if you've got a ruckman on top and your ruckman's never putting his hand on the ball, and that's like when Himmelberg was rucking, you'd actually reposition yourself working on what the other guy's doing.
Yeah, but that's different. That's when you're playing to a losing ruck. But Riley wasn't losing the ruck. It's just that Riley will put it where it's easiest for Riley to put it. And if the bounce of the ball has the angle of the bounce has put him facing a certain way, he'll just put it there. I saw him do it 4 or 5 times where he just put it in front of him, even though we didn't have a midfield there. And you think to yourself, who the hell are you tapping that to? You know, it's impossible for the midfield to adjust to that because it happens in a split second.
Some of our midfield structures are set up for absolutely horrible thing. I mean, having been a midfielder, you just know where you don't go and you know where you do go. And sometimes we just there's no way we could have had a player in that spot if we'd got the tap.
Yeah,
so, that was poor. The other thing I was going to say about Thilthorpe, I thought he had more intensity last year as a first-year player than he has as a second-year player. Are you seeing it like that?
He's got resting bitch face, hasn't he? He's
Like
got a very hangdog look about him.
Last year I thought he was just full of enthusiasm and bubbling and having a crack at everything, and he's not mentally in the same space as he was last year. No, there's no doubt about it. And
I don't know about that.
Wrong. I think he'll still end up being a very, very star player. But at the moment, and second-year Blues, I don't think he's quite mentally where he was at last year.
I disagree with that. I think you've probably got a little bit of confirmation bias on that one, Mac, because certainly he was up and about when we had a couple of good games and he was in amongst it. But I
liked his intensity this game. I thought his intensity was quite good.
Well, I actually thought he attacked the ball in the air as best as I've seen him at AFL level.
Not bad around the ruck, but I thought when he was resting up forward, I didn't think he was quite as intense. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, possibly. The thing is, I don't think he's a natural forward, Mac. I really don't. The other thing I'll say about the forwards is that how often were they, and Fogarty was the same, when the ball was coming off our half back line, our forwards seem to always be deep. I always seem to see Darcy or Thilthorpe or one of the others sort of about 5 or 6 metres behind their direct opponent. And it made me wonder, why were they playing so deep when the ball was on our half back line? I just didn't understand the positioning of our forwards at all.
I'll argue with you, Fane.
I think with Riley, I think he's got a bit of an expression about him, Macca, which makes him, like I said, he's got like resting sad face or resting bitch face. But I think there were certainly games last year where he was similar, or he looked similar, he lacked intensity. I think what you're remembering is the games when we were up and about and he was involved. But he's going to have to work on his body language a bit, I think, and his ability to maintain intensity for over the course of a game, even when things aren't going right.
Yeah, to give you an example of what I'm getting at, it's like McAdam last year, his body language on the ground was terrible. And whereas this year, his body language is very good. And and his performance then relates to the way his body language is telling you. And I just would, it's only not a long way off. It's just, he just looks like he's not 100%.
Yeah, look, you could be right, mate. I think it's more about, I don't know. Well, let's see how that plays out. Jackson Haitley, for the opportunities he got, had a good game, I thought. 27 touches, 14 and 13, had 8 tackles as well, which is good. Spent 80% time on the ground. Pity it wasn't in the right position for most of it. He had 5 score involvements and 7 contested possessions. Geordie Dawson, also 27 touches. Probably he's the most subdued he's been for us, though. I think Geelong were quite intent on making him accountable, and inexplicably we played him up forward for various portions of the game. Had 18 touches, 9 and 7. You know, when you 18 kicks, 9 handballs, 7 marks, 579 metres gained still. So, you know, he's just that sneaky player that will get you yardage. 6 inside 50s, 5 score involvements, 8 intercepts, 75% disposal efficiency. I suppose when you read those stats and you think he had a mediocre game, it shows you the standard that he's set in terms of his normal performance, doesn't it?
Well, he's actually getting tagged very, very heavily. They stuck to him like glue, and he moved around, and because of his quality, he managed to lose them on occasions. But gee, they know that he's our best player, and they knew that he was the one that could cause the most trouble. And he was really, they had to try to keep a clamp on him, but as you say, he's too good to keep a total clamp on. It's by far the best player we've got.
Matty Crouch.
Yeah, and just on that, Macca, we need to, as a team, protect him a bit better. And I think that's where part of the problem's coming, is that they're not trusting each other, and they're not actually sacrificing themselves to allow him to get free and to not be so frustrated and such.
Yeah, I mean, his body language said he was a bit pissed off at times. You can see that when things that should have logically gone well for us down forward didn't. But to his credit, he shrugs it off and then gets on with the next one.
Well, Jad in the chat makes the best. Jad in the chat makes the best call. He's Mr. Fix-It at the moment, and that'd piss anyone off. You know, he's just being used to plug gaps. You know, at the end of the day, we've got to make blokes accountable. And again, gets back to this mentality that our coaching group have got, where you talk about trust, Nicky. They don't trust the players that they've drafted and developing in those positions to play those positions, and they just plug the gaps all the time. Matty Crouch, we've spoken about him enough. 26 touches, 12 and 14, 6 tackles, 4 clearances, 281 metres gained. 2 inside 50s, 2 centre clearances, 4 stoppage, 53.8% disposal efficiency, 8 contested possessions for an inside player isn't enough in that sort of a game. We don't have to bang on about Matty much more than that, though. Brodie Smith, we've also talked about. 20 touches, 14 and 6, 405 metres gained. I just thought... unfortunately, in this one, there's no clangers. There are clangers.
So yeah, he had that meters gain, but how much was that then turned over and came back further?
Yep, absolutely, Nick. I didn't think it was a very influential game from Brodie. James Rowe, another one. Matt, I'm interested in your view on this. I think James Rowe plays a bit scared.
No, I don't. I just don't know whether he does, Fiend. I don't think he pikes it. I don't think he plays in the right position because he's definitely not a goal square crummer. He
You
needs to
can't
be
say
higher.
that.
He plays
can't
much better
say
when he's
that.
higher up the field. When he used to play with West Torrens, with West Torrens, he used to. I reckon he may have been played as a non-baller, but if he wasn't on ball, he was always high up and drifting down forward. So therefore, it gave him an opportunity to go run into holes. But if he starts off down there, I don't think he goes all that well.
Well, then he's the wrong player. Shouldn't be in the team. Sorry. Tommy today looked like he was drunk. Fumbled and stumbled and slipped and miskicked and whatever. It was a really weird game, uncharacteristic from Tommy. Don't know what the hell is going on there. Nick, I think you mentioned in the game day chat that he had a fair bit of strapping on his hand.
He had strapping, but then he also had guards over the hand, and I reckon there was 3 of them, one over his thumb, one over 2 fingers, and then one over one of the other fingers. And at one stage, he was having to pick it up and slide it back on again after he'd done some fumbling.
So
and when
why
I saw
are we
that,
playing him?
I was looking at him, and he was trying not to use that hand too much, because you saw a couple of his handballs just had no penetration and everything else. If he was that injured in that hand, he should not have been out there.
100%. Again,
we've
got 900. Yeah, no, we're talking about Tom Diday.
Oh, do they? Oh, God, he played a stinker, didn't he? Yeah, and look, I didn't actually notice the bandaging and all that, but yeah, that probably explains why he had such a stinker.
Well, we just need to give him a rest.
And as Marty Magic pointed
Nicky
out,
Hassel says, what other
matched him on Wednesday.
Nicky Hassel says, what other defenders have we got? I don't know whether you can hear me, Nicky, but you keep talking over me. Nicky Hassel in the chat saying, what other defenders have we got? We've got 750 halfback flankers. You know, Billy Frampton is the third man up. Josh Worrell, we've already talked about. How many more opportunities do you want to give those people? You know, we've got Fisher Mackesy that probably wouldn't mind a run. We had plenty of defenders that could come in for Tom Diday. Plenty. But no, we'll play him injured. Sam Berry didn't get enough opportunities, but did well with what I thought with the opportunities he got. Mitch Hinge was serviceable, I thought. I don't know. How did you see his game, Nick?
Yeah, I think serviceable is pretty much the way to describe it. I mean, he did some good things. He then also decided to try and hurt some of our players as well. Not as badly as Murray does.
No.
I mean, he's not a highly skilled player, but I think he did what he could.
Well, I think serviceable sums it up pretty well. He didn't start, but he wasn't thrashed, so he was serviceable.
Yeah. Ned McHenry again tries, but I think the time has come for Ned to get out of the side, because for all his efforts, if he can't kick a goal from 20 metres out, he's not an AFL player. The end.
Terrible. That was terrible.
Shane McAdam, the thing I've liked about Shane this year is his defensive efforts and his ability to stay focused and stay in the contest for longer. So, you know, limited opportunities, but I thought he tried hard. Lockie Murphy just doesn't get play. There was one stoppage that I distinctly recall Lockie Murphy getting absolutely beaten up by his opponent, and I can't remember the guy's name. It's their tagger. What's his name? Not Guthrie. Who was it?
They were very much restricting him.
Tough nut sort of a bloke. I can't remember.
They're saying Atkins.
Atkins. Yep, probably. And getting shut out of the contest, and this is just one stoppage. And Lockie Murphy did a nice little fake, went the other way, and got the clearance. And it just reiterated to me how much we need to either be playing him as a midfielder or not playing him. Lockie Murphy is just a midfielder. He's just a midfielder. It's the end. He's just a midfielder.
I
He's
agree with you,
good
Pete.
one.
I think he's not a bad midfielder either because he's got that rare quality of pace that we don't normally have, and he can deliver an accurate ball as well. So I 100% agree with you, Pete.
He's quick. He can get separation. He's got a good step, and he, unlike the rest of them, he actually hits targets out of congestion. 9090 just cracked the sads
He used a
lately.
lot in the middle. I'd use him a lot in the middle.
9090 just cracked the sads lately. He's been so negative. Come on, mate. Chin up. 9090, chin up.
No, I think above that, J. Crow, he's a dynamic mid. He moves at stoppage and he moves with pace.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. In terms of getting separation, he's able to move through congestion. He doesn't get bogged down like Matt Crouch does, like Rory Laird does. He actually can move forward through congestion. Same with Samberry. They can move forward through congestion and use the ball.
Yep.
Who else we got here? Luke Brown shouldn't be in the side, and I hope that they retain Chase Jones and give Luke a rest.
Yeah, Brownie's in terrible form at the moment. In fact, he hasn't played a decent game for weeks now.
Yeah.
All year.
Riley Thilthorpe, we've spoken about. Did a couple of nice grabs and all the rest of it. Just got to persevere with him. Darcy Fogarty, it was good to see him make the most of his opportunities. He looked engaged. We'll have to see what happens. Over the coming weeks with Tex coming back, but he wasn't disgraced by any means. And how many goals? He kicked 3 goals, didn't he? Certainly not disgraced. Will Hamill probably was. What he did was good. Probably just didn't do enough. Was my impression of Will.
I actually gave him a pass, mate. I thought he played a reasonably. With the ball being bombarded down there all the time, I thought overall I would have given him a pass.
I liked a lot of the time when he was running past, it was that proactive movement out of defence, that fast movement. He was there to be used, but instead of passing it to him, he has beautiful, lovely skill, Laird, you go for a long bomb kick direct to Stewart once again.
I'll tell you the thing, and Bobby mentioned it in the chat. Will Hamill certainly has got a turn of pace. He burned off a couple of players from a standing start a few times. It's very impressive. Jake Saligo, everything he does, I really like. I'll be happy when he gets more involvement. I wouldn't mind seeing him getting a couple of CPAs. But he looks like he's got a bit of class about him, Jake Saligo, and he's tough. Liked his work.
Well, Razor said he sold on him, and so am I, Razor. You're going to have to share him, mate, because there is nothing in his game that I don't like. And all he has to do is get more and more experience at this level. And, I mean, some of his stuff there on the weekend was outstanding, I thought. And, just in terms of effort and beating players that have got much more experience than him. And he's a thinker as well, Fiend. And he's got excellent disposal of the foot. Several times he was in the middle of tackles where he got bowled over and jumped on, and all he does is just gets up, runs away, and gets ready for the next one.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's nothing about him I don't like. I think he's terrific.
Yeah,
he's 100%. A footballer.
Dead set.
That's exactly how I would describe him, Nick. He's just a dead set footballer, isn't he?
So nice having one.
Yeah. Miller was spoken about, just useless, shouldn't have been in the team. Chase Jones got 6 touches in the quarter or so that he was on, nearly 200 metres gained, so I hope that he stays in. Nick Murray, the destroyer, Tommy Hawkins didn't do much, so I reckon Nick Murray did his job, I suppose. Between him and Geordie, they had difficult jobs, but I thought they both did well, and Geordie was a bit unlucky to cop Nick's knee in the side of the face, and looks like he will miss next week as well, just when we come up against Darling.
I was about to say, he's a tough unit, and he doesn't mind hurting people, and it doesn't matter which side they're on. He just goes, he doesn't see anything. He just Charles running at the ball and hits anything in the way. That man is a very tough guy, and he's not the greatest skilled player, but I would keep playing because he really he just tries.
And he's one of those who's got that little burst of speed, which a lot of people kind of forget that he has. So he's quite a good matchup for some of their players. Like against Cameron, he was corralling Cameron quite well the couple of times where he had him. And because he's got that burst of speed, he's got that agility, and we keep seeing that jump that he's got is fabulous, except when he puts his knee into Butts' face. Then it's not so much fun.
Yeah. Vardy in the chat makes a good point, and I don't disagree. Vardy, I wouldn't mind seeing him up forward. I reckon he'd take a few grabs. So that's the individuals. Nothing really stand out there. Quite difficult, I think, this week to go our 5-4-3-2-1. So I'll be very interested to see what the two of you have to say about that. And Nikki yeah, Nikki, considering it's
Hell
supposed
no.
to be your week.
I don't even have a list. I've got no idea.
Hey, come on, mate.
Put up 5 names, Nick.
Come on.
I need to gather my thoughts.
Okay.
She needs to gather her thoughts. We just went through every player.
I know,
Right.
but you've only just finished it, so I've got to kind of absorb and think because I was so
Okay.
bloody frustrated after the game.
Well, give me a clue. I'm going to give the 5 to Dawson.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you really?
Value for possession, Payne.
All right. And 4 points?
By Riley O'Brien.
Yeah. 3?
It does get hard. It does get hard. It really does.
Come on.
I'm going to give my 1 point to Saligo. So I've got to find 2 in between, don't I?
Yeah, you do.
No, definitely. Yeah, I've given 5 to Dawson. I'm giving 4 to Rob O'Brien. I'm giving 3 to Haitley. To Haitley. I'm giving 2 to Laird and 1 to Saligo.
Righto. Okay, Nick. You got nowhere to hide now.
I know it's bloody hard. But as much as we were annoyed at him, I actually think I'll give the 5 to Rob.
Yep.
And then I'd go the 4. I think I'm going to give the 4 to Fogarty because I thought that was a good game for him. In spite of the delivery and everything else that was happening.
I can't actually believe that Macca left him out, to be honest.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Then I'll go Dawson.
Yeah.
Haitley.
Yeah.
And my 1, I've kind of got a bit of a toss up for the 1. I'll go Saligo as well because no, Berry.
No, Berry.
I like Berry's game.
Right. Now, Mac, you just had a bit of an aneurysm about Darcy Fogarty. We didn't read his stats. He had 6 kicks, 5 handballs, took 5 marks, 1 hit out, 1 clearance, 1 goal assist. He had, where are you, Darcy? He had 1 contested mark. He had 7 score involvements and 6 contested possessions. So 3 goals, 1 and 7 score involvements as a key forward. When your team gets the ball inside forward 36 times and half of those are kicked straight to Tom Stewart, I reckon that's a pretty good return. I think you're underselling Darcy a bit.
I could be, but I didn't think he was second best, that was all.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where there wasn't many great players. I'm with you, Nick. I'll give...
it's very hard.
Yeah. O'Brien, for me, despite his limitations, was probably our best. I'm going to also give Fogarty 4 votes because I thought he was our most effective forward. I'm going to give Haitley 3 votes because I thought he was alright. Dawson 2 votes and Berry 1 vote. So we're all sort of round the 5 players. You could interchange Berry and Saligo, I think. Just it's a bit of a toss of the coin, as you said, Nick. So, yep.
Yeah.
So,
and you're right. It was bloody. It was so hard because that's why I said I need to still kind of think about this because it was such a horrible game. There was great effort, but we didn't have anybody for a full 4-quarter effort. We had some that came in and out, and you just kind of had to consider who actually, for the best effort, who gave it.
yeah.
Well, that's why I think you got a little bit harsh on Dawson, who's had to go about 1,000 different spots and uses the ball so well. But it's only a matter of opinion, and as I've always said, they like our uphold, we've all got one.
Yep, very good. So to finish off, at the end of the day, you know, we lost by 42 points and we kicked 1,000 points ourselves, 13 points. You know, we kicked half of those and half of those were easily gettable. It might have been a different story, although the Cats, I don't think, got out of second gear unless they had to. They always seem to have an answer when we got a bit of a run on. But it's going to be very interesting next week. Very interesting next week, Macca and Nikki, because the West Coast game has danger written all over it.
Well, if they're going to beat anybody, it'll be us because we'll do the wrong thing. But you know, surely, I watched them playing today, and look, everybody should beat them. And we're playing them at home too, aren't we?
Yes.
But
and we're massive favourites, and the last time that happened, we were absolute poo.
Well, you're quite right, Nick. Look, with no faith, you'd have to pick them, though.
Look, I think so, but it's one of those games that's just got massive danger written all over it to me.
Just on a different note, Thane, midweek draft. What do you reckon we need?
Well, I was going to cover that off real quick. Just bear with me a sec. I'm just doing something. Where am I? Right, there we are. Just messing around here, don't mind me. Mid-season draft. Interesting that we... sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Interesting that we decided to put Seed and Sloan on the long-term injury list. It means that we're going to be in the frame by the looks of it. Look, it makes you wonder what it is that they're actually going to go for, because potentially we've got 2 spots now to fill, and I would imagine they might have a look at a key defender, and I would imagine they might also try out a mature age midfielder.
And that's exactly how I see it too, Thane. Somebody, a tall defender, not a halfback flanker type, but a tall defender, if possible, because we are lacking a little bit of height down there, and a midfielder, and hopefully one with it's got a little bit of speed about them. We don't want another Matt Crouch accumulator doing nothing type. We want, if it's possible, and surely, with all the players that have nominated, and you look around the country, if our recruiting team have done their homework, and we're going to have pick 4, I think it is, we should be able to get a reasonably good quality midfielder who maybe missed a draft or 2 and can add something to the side. I can't see the point in trying for a key forward unless they'd have to be absolutely outstanding, but I can't see the point. But I'd say for me, it would be a key defender and a mid.
Yeah.
We basically need a mid who has height, which Hamish seems to be allergic to picking.
You're
We
quite
also
right.
need a midfielder who actually is inclined more to kick the ball more than handball and actually has decent foot skills. Another thing Hamish seems to be allergic at picking.
Well, there's
Well,
two ways. There's two ways to go here. And last year we picked Paddy Parnell, and I thought Paddy Parnell was a decent enough pick, but was obviously not AFL ready. I think this year we need to pick a couple of 24-year-olds that are AFL ready, physically AFL ready, and potentially, hopefully, up to the standard that they can play some minutes. It's clear that Pedler is a little way off, and we need some polish on the outside at the moment. We just don't have anyone who can really stand out on the outside of that, would be that in-out midfielder that Harry was supposed to be. So that's where I'd go with it. Whether we take both the picks, I assume we will, considering we've made 2 spots available. But it'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, and you're quite right about the age group. It's not. I don't think it's worthwhile us looking at the 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds, unless there's an outstanding one that slipped through somehow. But our gap in our team is in that we don't have that 23, 24, 25 age group very well represented at all. So
that's right.
That would fit in nicely with me. So yeah, I think that'd be about the age group I'd be looking for, and probably the same type of person that you said, but with the qualities that Nicky said.
All right, now we're getting up to the 2-hour mark, so we've got to round this off. So just quickly, we'll have a look at the tipping as it's going along at the moment. We've got Brett still going strong on 73, one over Terry on 72, Harry M and Kirk on 71, Nadine Elvis on 70, Rummy on 69, along with Barry, Jacob, Claire, Pogger, and Jamie, and then it tails away all the way down, and I got 7, I think, this week. So I wasn't, and I actually picked the Freo upset. Unfortunately, I didn't pick the Gold Coast one. Where am I? 81 with an average of 4.8. Naka, do I even deserve to be running this podcast? Should I just chuck it in? How can anyone take anything that I say seriously when I'm 81st in my own tipping comp?
Well, look, that doesn't mean that's judging a team, not an individual thing. So, let's say you're good with individuals.
It's just a bit embarrassing, really. But never mind. But all right, so we're nearly at the 2-hour mark, but it'd be remiss of me if I didn't just do this real quick. So, Nikki, you're the front runner at the moment, so you better have some good bloody nominations.
I'm not going to bother, because you're all just going to say it's me.
Well,
come on.
Mine, I'll give you a nomination. The fiasco that happened in the Sydney game, as the siren ended, when the free kick paid out of goal scoring range, and the Sydney player Warner grabbed it with joy and kicked the ball out of the ground. Well, technically, if you play it to the letter of the law, there is an argument. It would have been 50 metres. You could hear the umpire talking, and in one you could hear him say at one stage, "So it's a 50-metre penalty."
No, that wasn't the umpire that said that. That was a Richmond player that said that.
Yeah, that was a Richmond player that said that. And the umpire was actually checking upstairs to ask when he actually kicked it. Was it like immediately when the siren went, and he was actually double checking about the crowd noise and whether he'd actually heard the whistle go.
Oh, I thought the umpire had said that, and I thought that was the
No.
but
No,
it
actually,
was,
I was really happy with the umpires in that situation because they had a feel for the game. They actually had an understanding. And that moment in time, he wouldn't have heard the whistle.
well, did you see the situation of the 250-metre penalties played down the ground where a guy gets a free at one end of the ground and gets carted all the way down the other end of the ground and gets a goal? Do you think that umpire had a feel of the game at that stage?
No.
So it's a question if they're going to act like they're going to dictate it to the letter of the law, then they've got to be that all the time. But I was just thinking, at the moment, we've got a situation where umpires turn into little Hitlers and dominate the situation. And, so I would just nominate umpiring standards at the moment as a good cock-womble.
Well, the thing about that particular situation, Macca, is that the letter of the law, if I'm not mistaken, Nikki, is that when someone doesn't give the ball back on the full or kicks the ball away or whatever, that's the 50-metre penalty for that is actually for time wasting. Am I correct, Nick?
Yes.
Right, and you can't waste time once the siren's gone.
Precisely.
The end. Logic wins every time.
No, I agree with you. In fact, I just think I hate all our 50 metres anyhow. But
I think it should be 25.
But I agree, Nick. But I think I'm sure the siren had gone before he kicked the ball. So you're
that's
quite right.
So you can't waste time because time's off.
I agree that we've still got a massive issue with the umpiring and the umpiring standards. And it's on some of those umpires. Because they're not good and I don't think they're at the level. But then it's also on the coaches and the others putting them out there and the stupid rules and the interpretation of the rules.
Well, my cockwomble is actually the AFL because they've got to do something right now because the crowds have not been lower for a long, long time. There is a massive disparity between the top 8 and the bottom 8. Probably the biggest disparity that I can recall between the top 8 and the bottom 8, notwithstanding the 2 expansion teams. And the rules make the game almost unwatchable. So the AFL have dug themselves into a big, big hole here because fans like me, and I'm sure you guys are the same, and I'm sure plenty of our listeners are the same, I can't be stuffed watching. I watch a Crows game, but half the time the Crows games, they frustrate me. And I watch other games and I think, how would I ever explain this to someone from overseas? The AFL have got to really look hard at the product they're putting on the ground. They've over what's the word? Like too many rules.
Over finessed.
They're trying to manipulate the game too much instead of allowing the rules to shape the game. And the other thing that I would say is after how many years have we had the draft officially in the AFL? Ever since its inception, right?
30 years. About 30 years.
I think you could call it a failure right now.
Completely and utterly.
I think you could call the draft a failure. It is not doing what it's intended to do. It's not evening up the competition. Free agency has done nothing to even up the competition. We've got 2 teams at the moment on 50%. That's an unheard of percentage in the AFL. We've got another few on 70-odd%. The gap between the top and the bottom is massive. We're actually starting to, people say that dynasties are difficult, and yet we've actually seen more dynasties in the last 20 years than we've seen for a long time. The Brisbane one, the Geelong one, the Hawthorn one, the Richmond one. We had Sydney and West Coast fighting amongst themselves for a couple of years. And we're likely to see a Melbourne one. So it's actually not doing what it's intended. To my way of thinking, it's one of the few situations where I think the NRL have got it right. I think the AFL need to abolish the draft and just have the salary cap and allow free trade. Simple as that.
I think in time, and I can't see it happening for a few years, but I think it will ultimately get to that.
It has to. It's not working.
Because the problem is they keep looking at the NFL, and that's what they've based the draft on and everything else. But the NFL is an exceptionally flawed league. Exceptionally flawed. And it just should not have been brought here, purely and simply. I think one of the over officiating. I watched a bit of the Essendon Port game. Finlayson absolutely did what you think that rule was brought in about umpire dissent. The ball's been punched over the line. A free kick hasn't been paid. He's immediately turned to the umpire. You can see clearly that he's sworn at the umpire, throwing his arms up and everything else. But because a free kick wasn't paid, they can't get him for dissent.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
The stupidity of their rules, they don't understand the game.
Yeah.
And it frustrates me.
You know, the thing of it is there already is a rule for umpires' dissent. There was one already. You can't abuse an umpire. Simple as that. There already was a rule. You know,
and simply that's where you start and end. I think you should be allowed to show your reaction to the free kick because you're an emotional human being running around giving 100%. You don't necessarily agree with it. I think you should be allowed to throw your arms around and say, "Oh, you are joking" or something like that. But the minute you call him names or say you're an idiot or you're a cheat or something like that, then you go. But what they're doing, they're trying to make them into robots. Stand, don't have any emotion. It's ridiculous.
It's the most unwatchable football has ever been. The stand rule, I can't, pardon the pun, stand it. I can't stand it. It's treating our players like kids.
Oh, Millerer! That one against Millerer for holding the ball because the umpire didn't call stand. He's marked the ball. The Geelong player has held on to him after the mark.
I know, he's taken a step.
Which you're not allowed to do. And because Millerer has tried to move away from him, the umpire's called play on and then called holding the ball. It's like, dude, do you actually not understand the rules you're given?
Well, and the amount of times play on is called where a bloke's taken one step marginally off his line, it's like, that's not play on. They're like, you can't call play on when a bloke turns to look sideways, for God's sake. It's just, it is unwatchable at the moment. And some of it is the umpire's fault because they're not umpiring well, but a lot of it is just these rules. And I don't actually envy a lot of the umpires for trying to umpire our game at the moment. I think the AFL have just shown themselves to be so controlling in terms of the product. And again, they don't trust the product. Why do they think AFL is the most popular sport in Australia? It was the most popular sport in Australia before they got their hands on it. They didn't actually have to do anything. All they had to do was market it. It was already the number one sport in Australia before they got their hands on it at all. And here we are 20, 30 years later, and we've got the umpires making 50 frees a game, blowing the whistle every 5 minutes, or every 5 seconds, calling stand every 5 seconds. They got the bloody mics on, so all we ever hear is the bloody umpires.
I know, they've turned them up.
Oh my God, it drives you crazy, and I can't watch football anymore. I can barely watch the team that I support. And the AFL have got to do something about that because people are getting driven away. People are getting driven away. The crowds are low.
Well, I think very clearly, the Cotwell will have to go to Brad Scott.
Oh, no, it needs to go higher than that. It needs to go to Gill.
Well,
absolutely goes to Gill.
The only reason I nominated him, he was obnoxious as a player. He was obnoxious as a coach.
Yeah,
now he's obnoxious in charge of umpires.
He's a knob.
Gill's the one who keeps putting ex-players in that role and approving that. I think.
Let's just call it the AFL, shall we?
Oh, totally and
Yeah.
utterly the AFL. I mean, people don't go to neutral games anymore. How
No.
many times did you watch a game in Victoria? We tuned in with two opposing teams, which we didn't support, but we'd tune in to watch. And you look at the crowd, and you would always see opposition Guernsey, like the Guernseys of people on people who neither of those teams are playing, but they would go because they wanted to watch a game of football.
All
They're
right,
not anymore.
now, last thing to do before we go. We've obviously got our home ticket giveaway this week, and what a game it's going to be. A clash of the Titans, the Crows versus the Eagles, probably pissing down with rain. However, the challenge is on. I want to give these tickets away. So, if anyone wants to go this week, spare me having to use the tickets myself so that I don't go to waste. If anyone wants to go this week, put your name, only your name, in the tickets channel. And hang on, before anyone puts anything in the tickets channel, let me just clear it out. Where is it? Oh shit, I don't know. Bloody tickets channel gone. Macca, did you steal the tickets channel? Oh no. Anyway, that's all right. Put your name in the tickets channel, and good on you, Vardy. And we will definitely do our very best to give those tickets away to somebody who wants to go and see the epic Titanic struggle between West Coast and the Crows next weekend. Until then, that's it, Nikki and Macca. Thanks, Macca, for plugging the gap, and thanks, Nikki, for coming on at all, I guess.
Thanks, Funny Magic, for picking me and going, you're supposed to be on. And I'm like, what?
All right. Thanks, everyone who joined us on YouTube and Discord. Don't forget, sorry we didn't get anyone on. It turned into a bit of a ranty show, so apologies if anyone was on the live chat that didn't get a chat. But there's always next week. If you want to support us, don't forget, support us patreon.com/AFL Crowcast. Get your nominations in for the tickets this week, and we will see you next. Oh, and look out this week, because I'm pretty sure there'll be a player interview sometime during the week. So if you're a patron, look out on the Patreon page. I'll drop a message in there. You know, you can come into the Discord, the Patreon Discord channel, and listen live while I do the interview. I think it'll be Tuesday afternoon, and then we will release that as a standalone on YouTube and on Spreaker as well, on iTunes and all the other audio platforms during the week. All right. Thanks, Mac. Thanks, Nick. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, good night all.
Not all.